Well, students, in the last lecture, we have proved a convergence theorem for power method. We'll continue with this discussion and prove another convergence theorem for power method, which has a more restricted hypothesis, but it relaxes one of the important conclusions of the previous theorem. For that, let us first recall the previous theorem. The convergence theorem for power method that we have proved in the last lecture was the following. You have a non-singular matrix with real entries and assume that it has real eigenvalues. And further, you assume these three hypotheses. One is that A has a unique dominant eigenvalue and it has a complete set of eigenvectors. And the initial condition that we choose should be in such a way that C1 should not be equal to 0, where C1 is the coefficient of the vector V1 in the representation of X0, and X0 as such should not be in the kernel of AK for every K. Under these hypotheses, we have proved that the power method sequences converge in the sense that the sequence mu K converges to the dominant eigenvalue of the matrix A, and we can always find a subsequence of the sequence X that converges to an eigenvector of lambda 1. In this conclusion, the catchy point is that we may not in general expect the full sequence Xk to converge. Rather, we can only obtain up to a subsequence. That is what we have seen in the last class. That is because Xk may oscillate in general between plus or minus V1 divided by norm V1. Right? It means the sequence Xk may fluctuate between V1 divided by norm V1 to minus V1 divided by norm V1. It may jump from here to here, here to here like that. So therefore, you can have a subsequence which can converge either to this or this. That is what we have proved in the last class. Now our interest is to get the whole sequence converging to either this or this. Now, in order to obtain the whole sequence to converge, we need to give some restricted hypothesis in addition to these three hypotheses that we have given. That is our next theorem. Let's state it as second convergence theorem for power method. Assume that you have an n cross n matrix with all the hypotheses assumed in the last theorem are the same here also. In addition to these three hypotheses, we have H4, that is fourth hypothesis, which says that your eigenvector corresponding to the dominant eigenvalue lambda 1 should be in such a way that whichever index hits the maximum norm, that index should be unique. Like you should not have your vector like 1, minus 2 and 2, right? In which case your maximum norm of V1 is 2 and that is hit at index j equal to 2 and j equal to 3. So such situation should not occur. Okay, it should be just like V1 is equal to say 1, minus 2 and say minus 1. So this is okay because your maximum norm in this case is hit at the second index and that is unique anyway. So if you assume such a situation, then your sequence mu k will converge to the dominant eigenvalue because you are basically assuming all the hypotheses that are assumed in our first theorem. Therefore, the first conclusion we'll surely go through. We don't need to, in fact, prove anything, especially for this theorem. But the second conclusion is something which is more nice for us now, that the whole sequence of vectors, sequence xk, converges to the eigenvector corresponding to the dominant eigenvalue lambda 1. So this is the additional advantage that we are getting by assuming that there exists a unique index J such that the maximum norm of V1 is attained. Let us see how to prove this theorem. Let us set some notations before that. Your eigenvalues V1, V2, Vn are given by this. That's a notation. And your x0 as such is represented as the linear combination of the eigenvectors, thanks to our assumption that your eigenvectors span the space Rn. Therefore, when you apply A to x0, you have this, and that can be coordinate wise written in this form. How? Lambda 1 c1. The first coordinate of this vector is v11 plus lambda 2 c2 v21 and so on. And similarly, the nth coordinate. I'm not doing anything, just this vector notation I'm just substituting into each vector in this representation. That's all I'm doing. This is just putting the notations in place. That's all. I'm not doing any mathematics here. And for each k, when we go to multiply your a, k times with x0, the corresponding vector that we get, that is a k x0, is coordinate wise written like this. It's just a similar notations we are using. Now, once you keep this in mind, the rest is fairly simple. You can see that V1 I, that is any I, is equal to 1 to n. You can see that if you divide it by V1j, why it is so? Because this is the coordinate at which your maximum norm is achieved, right? Therefore, this will have the value which is greater than or equal to the value of the other components of V1 in the absolute sense, right? Therefore, you can see that V1I modulus divided by modulus of V1j should be less than or equal to 1 for all I equal to 1 to n. So once you have this, I'm just taking each component of this vector, that is a typical component of this vector, that is given like this, and that is ith component, divided by the same vector jth component I'm taking, right? And this will happen for all I equal to 1 to up to n. So this quantity is written like this. And now, as usual, what I will do is lambda 1 to the power of k, I will take common both in numerator and denominator, and I will cancel them. Then what remains is this, right? The first term will not have lambda 1k because I have removed it outside. All other terms will have lambda 1k in the denominator, right? I'm also removing c1 out here. Okay, therefore c1 also comes out and gets cancelled. So you have this expression. Now if you take k tending to infinity, what happens? Well, these terms all will contribute to 0. They all go to 0 because lambda 1 is the dominant eigenvalue, therefore, and it is unique. Therefore, all these terms lambda 2 by lambda 1, lambda 3 by lambda 1 up to lambda n by lambda 1, all these numbers are less than 1. Therefore, if you raise that number to the power k and then take k tending to infinity, all these terms goes to 0, and what remains is only this much, right? And from here, you can see that that is less than or equal to 1. So that is what we are having here. I will take modulus on both sides and take the k tending to infinity. Therefore, all these terms goes off, and you have V1I divided by V1J modulus, and that we know that it is less than or equal to 1. Therefore, this entire term is less than or equal to 1. But if I exclude J and take all other i's, then it will be in fact strictly less than 1. Note here that we have assumed J is the unique component at which maximum is attained, right? So up to here, I hope it is clear. Let us go ahead to see how to use this fact to get our conclusion. What is our conclusion? We have to show that our whole sequence xk converges, right? Full sequence converges. That is what we want to show. So let us take a typical term of this sequence, right? It is xk, and that is equal to ak into x naught. Remember, it is defined as yk divided by mu k, right? Yk is nothing but a into xk minus 1. But that if you recursively apply a, then you can get ak times x naught, right? Because if you recall, yk is nothing but a times xk minus 1. That is nothing but a xk minus 2, and so on. So when you go till ak, you have x naught, right? So that is what we wrote here, divided by mu k. Mu k is nothing but the value of yk j, where j is the index at which the maximum for yk is achieved, right? So that is precisely our notation here also. The jth index is the one at which you got the maximum norm. Therefore, this is precisely our mu, right? So I'm just writing xk in this form, and then writing component wise. The first, this is a vector and this is a scalar. So this vector has the first component like this, divided by this scalar. Like that, j minus 1th component of this vector divided by j, and the jth component will be jth component of this vector divided by the jth component of the same vector. Therefore, that will be 1, and other things, j plus 1th component divided by jth component, and so on, right? So this I'm just writing coordinate wise, that's all. Now look at each of the component, how they look like. Well, it was given in 5. Each component is given like this. And now when you take k tending to infinity, you can see that each term of this vector will tend to v1i divided by v1j, right? This is how each of these components go with the corresponding I, right? So I ranging from 1 to n. And that is precisely your v1 divided by v1j, right? So xk is therefore converging to v1 vector divided by v1j, the component of the vector v1 at which the maximum norm of v1 is achieved. You should also remember this xk precisely where it converges. Okay, it converges to the vector like this. Okay, it means you take x naught and you chose v1, v2 and so on, vn, and you wrote c1 v1 plus c2 v2 plus cn vn, right? That v1 which is sitting in the representation of x naught, you take that v1 and plug in here, and the maximum norm of v1, no, its value, so mod v1j is actually the maximum norm of v1. The value of v1 is what is sitting here. So this xk sequence is actually converging to this vector. Clearly, this vector is a eigenvector corresponding to the dominant eigenvalue lambda 1, right? And that is going to be the full sequence converging, unlike the previous theorem. In the previous theorem, we could not get the limit precisely. We got the limit as either plus of this or minus of this. Therefore, it may also oscillate between that. That possibility was open in that argument. But here we are more precise because we fixed this component v1j as a unique component. Therefore, we got only one limit of this sequence, and hence the full sequence is converging. And this completes the proof of this theorem. We now have a fairly good understanding of the power method. Power method basically generates two sequences. One is a sequence of real number and other is a sequence of vectors. The sequence of real numbers is expected to converge to the dominant eigenvalue of the matrix A, and the sequence X, the vector sequence, should converge to a corresponding eigenvector of lambda 1. For that, we first introduced three hypotheses. With that hypothesis, your sequence of real numbers will converge to the dominant eigenvalue, but the sequence of vector may not fully converge, but up to a subsequence it can converge to a corresponding eigenvector of lambda 1. Where that subsequence can converge is, it can converge to up to a subsequence. It can converge to either plus v1 divided by norm v1, right, or minus v1 divided by norm v1 up to a subsequence. But that was our first convergence theorem. The second convergence theorem assumes one more condition on the eigenvector v1, that is, its maximum norm is achieved at a unique index. Once you assume that condition, then this subsequence goes, it converges, the whole sequence converges to the vector v1 divided by v1j, where v1j is that component for which the maximum norm is achieved. Okay, therefore, this plus or minus ambiguity is removed here because it has the unique component at which the maximum is achieved. So this is the overall convergence summary of power method. There are some obvious disadvantages in the power method. Let us highlight few of them. The first and foremost, the main disadvantage of power method is that it requires that the matrix has only one dominant eigenvalue. Generally, this information is not available to us, and therefore, we really don't know whether we can apply the power method for a given matrix or not. So it's just a blind work at the beginning. Although we have a very nice convergence theorem, we really cannot test the hypothesis of the theorem before applying power method, because the hypothesis all involves the eigenvalues and eigenvectors of the matrix. That's the main disadvantage of power method. The next disadvantage is, even when there is only one dominant eigenvalue, it is not very clear whether the initial guess that we chose is in such a way that in its representation, this first coefficient, that is C1, is not equal to 0, right? If it is equal to 0, then the power method will not converge to the dominant eigenvalue, even though if the dominant eigenvalue is unique. It may converge to the next dominant eigenvalue that we will see in the next example. But if you are very particular about converging to the dominant eigenvalue, and if you go to choose a x0, which is unfortunately having its C1 component as 0 with respect to the eigenvectors that you have, then even if the power method converges, the one you get may not be the dominant eigenvalue. That is the problem. Basically, if one or more hypothesis fails, then it's not necessary that your power method will not converge. It may converge to something which is not a dominant eigenvalue. Let us discuss all this through some examples. Of course, the hypothesis 1, which says that the dominant eigenvalue should be unique. Now, the question is, what happens if this hypothesis is not satisfied by your matrix? Well, we have already illustrated this with an example where we had a matrix B for which you have distinct eigenvalues. Nevertheless, its dominant eigenvalue is not unique, in the sense that -2 and 2 both were dominant eigenvalues, right? So in that case, we have seen in the last example that the power method was not converging. It is simply oscillating between two values. So that's an illustration that if the hypothesis 1 is violated, we cannot in general expect the power method to converge. Now let us take the hypothesis 2. If you recall, the hypothesis 2 says that A has n linearly independent eigenvectors, right? What happens if this hypothesis is violated? What happens if the dominant eigenvalue is not simple? Especially what happens if the dominant eigenvalue is unique but repeated? Say, for instance, the eigenvalues of your matrix are, say, 2, 2, and 1. In this case, your dominant eigenvalue is unique because 2 is the dominant eigenvalue, but it is repeated. Recall in the case of the matrix B that we took in the last example, the dominant eigenvalue is not unique, but it has distinct eigenvalues because your dominant eigenvalues are -2 and 2. Well, if the algebraic multiplicity of the dominant eigenvalue is R, and if the geometric multiplicity is also R, then the power method still converges. However, if geometric multiplicity is not equal to algebraic multiplicity, then the power method may not work. Next, let us see what happens if the hypothesis 3 is violated. Recall that the hypothesis 3 is about the initial guess x0. We have to choose our initial guess x0 in such a way that its representation with respect to the eigenvectors as basis should have its C0 to be not equal to 0, and also x0 should not belong to the kernel of AK for every k. Let us see what happens if we choose our x0 in such a way that C1 is equal to 0. Well, this is not something which is practically feasible, because when we apply power method to a matrix, most probably we will not be knowing the eigenvalues and eigenvectors, and therefore we will not be knowing whether the initial condition x0 that we choose will satisfy this condition or not. But academically, we can understand what happens if such situations occur. For that, let us go back to our matrix, which we worked in one of the examples previously, that has three distinct eigenvalues with unique dominant eigenvalue 3. And you can notice that it has the unique next dominant eigenvalue 1. And the corresponding eigenvectors may be taken like this. Now, if you recall, in the last example, we have chosen x0 to be 1, 0.5 and 0.25. And we saw that our sequence mu k nicely converged to lambda 1 and xk sequence converged to v1 divided by 2, right? Now, what happens if we choose a different initial condition? Well, a different initial condition may lead the power method to converge to a different eigenvalue of A, which may not be a dominant eigenvalue. Let us illustrate this. Unlike the last case where we took 1.5 and 0.25, now we will take x0 to be 0, 0.5 and 0.25. You can see that when we write x0 as a linear combination of v1, v2 and v3, we can see that the value of C0 will happen to be 0 here, right? That is because the first equation will obviously become C1 is equal to 0, right? Therefore, it is interesting to see how the power method will behave in this case. Let us compute the iterations of power method by starting our iteration with x0 given by this. Then in the first iteration, we will get y1 as this vector, out of which we will have 8.75 as the infinite norm of y1. That leads to mu1 to be minus 8.75. And from here, you can get x1 as y1 by mu1, and that is given like this. Now we will proceed to iteration 2, which is given like this. Iteration 3 is given like this. You can now itself see that your power method iteration mu has converged to the second dominant eigenvalue, and the sequence xk has converged to this vector. If you carefully see, that is going to be 1 by minus 5 of v2, right? Now the same is repeated in iteration 3, iteration 4 and so on. Therefore, we can conclude that the sequence has already converged within 2 or 3 iterations. And the reason is that the initial guess x0 is in such a way that C1 is equal to 0 in this case. That is why your power method has converged to the second dominant eigenvalue. Suppose your x0 is in such a way that C1 is also equal to 0 and C2 is also equal to 0. And if you have the third dominant eigenvalue to be unique, and of course your eigenvectors should span the whole space, in which case your iteration will converge to the third dominant eigenvalue and to a corresponding eigenvector. Like that, it will keep on going. Note that in the above example, we have taken x0 like this, where it happened that the first coordinate is 0. But that is not the reason why it converged to the second dominant eigenvalue. The reason was that C1 is equal to 0. This is an important point you have to keep in mind. Therefore, you have to be careful while deciding whether your power method converges to the first dominant eigenvalue or the second dominant eigenvalue or so on. Doesn't depend on whether your coordinates are 0, but it will depend on whether your C1 is 0 or C2 is 0 and so on. Why that is happening? Because you can see that when you represent your x naught as the linear combination of the eigenvectors, where your C1 is 0, then this will happen to be C2 V2 plus C3 V3 and so on, right? And that will in turn make your AK to be, if you recall, it was like this, where now you have taken C0 to be equal to 0. Therefore, what happens is this entire exercise you can now do by just removing this term, but replacing your C1 by C2 now, and pull at every time when you multiply A, you pull out lambda 2 now, right? And thereby you will have lambda 2 to the power of K into C2 V2 plus the other terms. And as usual, the other terms will go to 0 as K tends to infinity, because your lambda 2 is now strictly greater than lambda 3 and so on. Well, provided this happens, then we are having such a situation where your power method will converge to the second dominant eigenvalue if your x naught is such that C1 is equal to 0, right? So that is the reason. Similarly, if C1 is 0, C2 is also 0, then the first term will also go, second term will also go. Then you will be pulling out lambda 3 from the expression, and therefore everything will become lambda 3v3 plus C4 into lambda 4 divided by lambda 3 and so on. And that will make your entire power method to converge to the third dominant eigenvalue and the corresponding eigenvector. Like that, it will keep on going. Again, I emphasize that who will decide to which dominant eigenvalue your power method to converge? It is not the first coordinate of the initial guess that we take, right? In the last example, we have taken the initial guess to be 0, 0.5, 0.25. Do not confuse that just because you took the first component as 0, it converts to the second dominant eigenvalue. That was not the key parameter which decides to which dominant eigenvalue your sequence should converge. This will not decide, rather whether C1 is equal to 0 or not will only decide. To show this, I will illustrate one more example where we take A to be this matrix. It has eigenvalues as this. Therefore, if you take a x naught such that C1 is not equal to 0, then your power method will converge to the eigenvalue -5 and its corresponding eigenvector. Okay, and the eigenvectors are given like this. Now I have taken my initial guess like this, and you can perform the iteration and see that your sequence will go towards the eigenvalue -5, and you know what is the corresponding eigenvector precisely. It will converge. From your theorem statements, you can also conclude exactly to which eigenvector it will converge. Well, it will converge to a eigenvector corresponding to lambda 1. You can in fact tell more precisely what is that eigenvector, provided if you know what is this vector v1, right? In fact, in this case, it will converge to 1/5 into v1. That is because v1, the maximum norm of v1 is achieved at the second component and its value is 5, right? So that is why it will converge to v1 into 1/5. Okay, so this you have to keep in mind. Also, one more thing to note is that the power method in this example converges quite slowly, as it took 25 iterations to obtain the convergence up to 5 significant digits. Of course, I have checked it on a computer. It is impossible for us to manually compute 25 iterations or so on. But this is just a remark to say that sometimes your power method can converge very slowly. Yeah, this is where I want to emphasize that not the first component will decide where it should converge. Okay, here we have taken x naught to be 0.5.25. You can see that the same x naught will not be leading to C1 equal to 0. In this case, C1 is not equal to 0. And therefore, if you use this vector as the initial guess, you can see that your power method still converges to the dominant eigenvalue. Why it is so? You can just write this x naught as the linear combination of the eigenvectors. And you can see that C1 is not equal to 0 here. If it happens to be 0, then you should see whether C2 is 0 or not. If C2 is not equal to 0, then only you should conclude that the power method will converge to the second dominant eigenvalue. If C1 is not equal to 0, you need not compute the iterations. You can directly say that your power method will converge to the first dominant eigenvalue, provided the other hypotheses are satisfied.